Our moderator for tonight, back again by popular demand, from CBS 21, is Mr. Tom Russell.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for having me back. My job is to make sure the evening just continues to run quickly. So before we start, can we have a round of applause for Bob for putting this together? They love you, Bob. It's really important that we have an educated electorate. So thank you so much for being here. And as you go home tonight, spread the word about what you heard, and we can keep everybody ahead of this game. So basically what you heard is how we're going to play out things tonight. Did we flip a coin to see who goes first by any chance?
Yeah.
Do you want to do that?
Andrew's youthful and better one.
You want to let Andrew go first? And we're off to a good start right there. Very nice. Very nice. Gentlemen, we ask that you use your microphone so that everybody can hear you. We're going to go ahead and give you a chance for an opening statement. You're going to tell us something about yourself, why you're running, and what you hope to achieve if elected. So each candidate, you have 4 minutes, and we'll defer to Andrew. Is that okay? Andrew, you want to start us off? Thanks.
Turn your mic on.
My phone is on vibrate, but I'm just going to use it as a timer so I stay within the time here. 4 minutes.
We'll catch you if you go over.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Time's up.
It's going to be an amazing forum. Cool. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Andrew Lewis, and I am honored to be running for Ron Marsico's open state house seat. Can everyone see me in the back, or would you prefer for us to stand? Stand. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So I'm thrilled to be here and honored to be running for this seat. It's a big decision our community is going to make because we haven't had a open state representative seat in 30 years now. So I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank each of you for coming, whether you're on the right or the left side of the aisle or somewhere in the middle. It tells a lot about you that you care about the future of our community and our state, and you care enough to be here on a Wednesday night. So thank you. I grew up in a small business family. My dad is a self-taught drywall finisher. My mom is a first-generation American. Her father, my grandfather Lombardo, came over from Calabria, Italy, and built a business and worked hard and pursued the American dream. When I was 18, I joined the Army at the height of the War on Terror and was sent as a scout in a reconnaissance platoon to Iraq for 15 months. Served in Ramadi, Fallujah, and then near Baghdad. And then when I came home, the military sent me to counterintelligence school and cross-trained me into being a counterintelligence agent, sent me to Korea for a few years running national security investigations. And when I came home, the DoD sent me to the White House military office to work there for about 3.5 years. And I was lucky to pursue and achieve both college and grad school on the GI Bill. So I'm very grateful for the GI Bill. And then when I hit about our 10-year mark, my wife and I had been married for a few years. We had 3 boys at this time, and we have 3 sons, Jeff, Jason, and Jeremy. We decided to come back home to central Pennsylvania and help my brothers who are building up a construction business. We have a construction company headquartered in Linglestown, just right down the street here. It's called Tradesman Building Group. Our biggest division is Tradesman Drywall. And so I've been very involved in the leadership of that company. We've been privileged to grow the company exponentially over the last couple years. And so my goal is to work hard to make our state the state that it could be and to achieve our potential, because we're not a business-friendly state. Sadly, we're not even a family-friendly state. We're not a worker-friendly state. We have more people leaving Pennsylvania every year than coming to Pennsylvania, and I think that's a problem. And so I'm running for 3 core reasons. Number 1, I love our community, and working together with folks from all walks of life every day, I want to bring our voice to Harrisburg. And number 2, I think we need to restore the notion of service to public service. We've lost that concept. You know, government is supposed to work for us, not the other way around. So I want to restore that. That's one reason I believe in term limits. It's one of the reasons I pledged to decline the pension and the lavish perks. I have no desire for that stuff. I'm going there because I want to serve and restore those concepts. And number 3, I want to work hard to enable our state to achieve our potential. Pennsylvania is the 6th most populous state in the country. We are geographically the center of the East Coast, but we rank 48th in job growth, 49th in population growth. When you are in the top 5 most corrupt states and you rank 48th in job growth, someone has to do something to reverse that paradigm. And so that is a key reason I'm running. Hope to earn your support and your vote on November 6th. Thrilled to be here. Thank you, and thanks Eric for participating as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Eric, would you like to stand and do the same?
No comment.
Make sure your mic's on.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah, my life is pretty much an open record. I don't need to go through my resume. I do want to thank everybody for coming out tonight And I'm going to spend the first moments of my time thanking Lower Paxton Township. If you came out tonight, that's great. It's your civic responsibility. However, there's 3 important meetings that I would like to advertise right now. Critical, October 25th, you go to the Zoning Hearing Board. There's a proposed tire facility at Colonial and Inglestown Road. I happen to think it's an awful idea. You may disagree, but if you go to Swan or if you go to Lower Paxton neighborhoods, we have over 1,000 hits. So that's happening right now in our community, and if you want to stop it, you got to show up. Second thing I want to remind people of is that we have stormwater meetings. Kudos to the township, October 29th, October 30th. You need to attend these. There will be a stormwater assessment or tax, and I know a lot of people have been groaning, but if you don't participate, you don't have a say. Finally, December 3rd, and these are all at Lower Paxton. Finally, on December 3rd, the Route 39 743 corridor project is going to be walked out. So that's important for everybody. I think everybody would agree the traffic conditions on 39 need to be improved. Also, if you noticed, Andrew Lewis has 2 first names, George Scott has 2 first names, Scott Berry has 2 first names. I'd like to thank my mom for giving me 1 first name. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I just don't think I'd go around life being Goldberg Epstein. That would work for me. You know, what I'm going to do is my reform resume. Andrew and I have been together Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, so we've been hanging out a lot. We've been doing some bonding. We do carpool, but please, I don't like to ride in the trunk, Andrew. Make the air holes bigger. It's tough, especially when it's a Yugo, which I don't think is an American car. You know, but one of the things we both agree on is that we've got to revise the paradigm of Pennsylvania being the most corrupt state. Here's my resume. And I think, you know, I don't like to do this. I don't want to be egocentric, but I think I need to remind people what we've done at Rock the Capitol since 2005. We've repealed the pay raise. That was unbelievable. Nobody told us we could do it. 11 groups, and if you remember, 5 conservative, 5 liberal groups worked together across the aisle, repealed the pay raise. That was unbelievable. We argued it at the Supreme Court. That same year, we defeated a Supreme Court justice, which had never been done in the history of Pennsylvania. A Democrat from Philadelphia. As you know, I'm an equal opportunity offender, and I'll get to some R's later. Botusgate, Computergate, lest you forget, 2006, 2011, we put 19 legislative leaders in prison, including 1 Republican Speaker of the House, 1 Democratic Speaker of the House. That was very difficult for me because a lot of people were affected who didn't know taking the bonus was the wrong thing to do. If you recall, Jan Murphy and I broke the story on a Saturday. It took us like 5 days to get confirmation. Painful to do. After that, we moved on to FIA. I don't know if you remember that scandal. From 2007 to 2018, we're still the only group that goes to FIA meetings. Go to our website. FIA is about to hit a crisis. It's underfunded. But the reason we went after FIA, if you recall, we had a 19-month legal battle through our right to know request to find out how they were spending our money. Here's how they spent $860,000. Facials, pedicures, culinary classes, fly fishing, wine, falconry lessons, and limo rides. We had that ended. We still go to these meetings, but I just, again, want to put things in historic perspective. We investigated the LCB, if you remember. They were the same people that spent several $100,000 to teach their employees how to say thank you and please. We didn't think that was a good idea. They spent another couple $100,000 to get mom schnockered on Valentine's Day, and they rolled out the vending machine idea, which was awful. So we had them investigated at the Security and Exchange Commission. You guys might remember Bob Mello. He asked me to run for Senate in 2004. We wound up indicting him. He's a Democrat from Luzerne County. So I think I have a pretty clear record of being dedicated to reform, being aggressive outside the dome. What I'm asking you to consider is putting me inside the dome so that we can get things done like, hey, no budget, no pay. Per diems, you got to be accountable. These are the things that I think I can accomplish once I'm inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate it. Okay, so the first segment will have some prepared questions, and candidates, you'll have up to 3 minutes to answer each one if you would like. Eric, we'll start with you, my friend. Our annual state budget is approximately $30 billion. What changes in spending priorities would you like to see, and would you support increases in the state income and sales taxes?
No, I don't. We don't need to increase the sales tax for the PIT right now. We just don't need to do it. I proposed for the last 15 years the same menu. I'll propose it again. By the way, I don't want to be rude, but I wish the budget was only $30 billion. It's north of 31, probably closer to 32. And that's the problem. These numbers sometimes get to be abstract. My personal life reflects my public life. I own my home, I own my car, my daughter's college graduation is paid for. I know I'm not the best dressed guy. I know my car is 20 years old, but if I can't afford it, I don't buy it. I apply the same principles to public life. You can't afford it, don't buy it. There's a difference between a need and a want. Government tends to be predicated on wants. We need to change that. I've supported since the 1980s, and some of you may be old enough to remember the Concord Coalition. We're a bipartisan coalition, Rudman, Graham, Paul Tsongas, Democrat and Republican. We froze the budget federally for 2 years. That's about all it lasted. But from that, what it informed me is we need a priority-based budget. So at the top of the pyramid, I think we'd all agree that right now it's public education, health, and welfare. What should be there is pension. Pension bet, and I've been fighting pensions for 15 years. It's excruciating. People deserve them. We got to pay them. One of the things we're going to have to do is find revenue for them. So a lot of people tell you what they don't like. What they don't tell you is how we're going to pay for it. These have been my approach. You can go to Rock the Capitol. Been putting them out there for years. First thing we need to do is get rid of the Delaware loophole. Big corporations are not paying their fair share. It unfairly burdens small corporations. About 80% of corporations do not pay their fair share. Most states have gotten rid of the Delaware loophole. I think the last state was Maine. Costs us $500 million a year. $240 million for racehorses is ridiculous. Most of the money goes out of state. There's $740 million that we could save if we simply enforce and do common sense things. Now, there's some other pet peeves I have, so if you will indulge me, I'll give you. But the first one is not a pet peeve. If Pennsylvania, through the Department of Public Welfare, allowed us to purchase prescription drugs directly, we could save between $180 and $300 million. These are big numbers. These are real numbers. These are doable numbers. You don't have to do this by raising the sales tax or the personal income tax. We don't need a film tax credit for Lionsgate. I've been complaining about that for 15 years. They're going to make their movies without $71 million. This is something that my colleagues aren't going to like. I've been proposing reducing the size of the legislative pay by 25%. By pay, I mean what we pay our staff. We are the most expensive legislature in the country. We can save a large amount of money there, up to $78 million. Of course, I'm not going to make any friends. We don't need to have WHAMs in my mind, or PSAs. And by WHAMs, we still have tourism WHAMs. And by PSAs, I mean $1.5 million we spend every year to tell you what color to wear when you go hunting. If you haven't figured it out by now, PSA ain't going to help you out. All right. I would also get rid of some other issues, but let me just state this. I'll be the first legislature that doesn't take a pension, that doesn't take public health care. I'm going to reduce my salary back to 1995 levels because I think the cost of living adjustment is unfair and illegal. The $19,000 I would save, that money would go half to veterans and half to victims of domestic abuse. You have to walk the walk and model the behaviors you want others to replicate.
All right, thank you. Andrew, we'll throw it to you. What changes in spending priorities would you like to see, and would you support any increases in state income tax or sales tax?
Well, on the last question, no. We have in Pennsylvania the 10th highest state and local tax burden in the entire country, so that's a solid no. But as far as what would I reform or what would I change in the state budget, let's look at the state budget for a second. It's not just $32 billion. $32 billion is state funding. That's before the special funds and the other funds. When you add federal funding, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania spends about $85 billion a year. $85 billion. We don't have a revenue problem in Pennsylvania. We have a spending problem. And what do we spend it on? Some very good points brought up. But the reality is it's about $254 million on the horse racing industry. It's about $64 million on the film tax credit. Netflix came over to Pittsburgh. They filmed a show called Mindhunter. Anyone in here seen it? Exactly. Oh, Everett? Everett Hamilton has seen Mindhunter. But nobody else. The point is normal people haven't seen it. And the reality is that was about $64 million. That's so when you look at it, we're talking over $300 or so million in corporate welfare. And I've seen a statistic that says we get about 30 cents back on every dollar we spend trying to bring this stuff into our economy. So it'd be better off not to ever have spent the money in the first place and to divert those funds to things like education so we can do things like bring down our property taxes. But here's what I'll tell you. The problem with Pennsylvania is very much what we spend money on, because we waste a heck of a lot of it, but also it's how we budget. Because we have a small business, we have a couple dozen employees, and every year when it's time to write the budget for the next year, the very first thing we do is identify what is a realistic revenue number? What can we expect to bring in next year realistically? And once we have that number, then you figure out, all right, now what can we afford to spend that money on? In Pennsylvania, we do it the exact opposite. First, they enact a spending bill. All right, then they turn around and enact the revenue bill. And half the time these legislators will vote yes on the spending bill because they want it, and then they'll be like no on the revenue bill so they can say they didn't vote for tax hikes. But in reality, they voted for the spending bill that required the tax hikes. So I propose reforming the entire system and saying, heck no, guys, you're going to vote on the revenue bill first. Put your money where your mouth is. Then you tell us, once you have that revenue, what you want to spend it on. We dramatically have to reduce our spending, our wasteful spending. We're going to do it with a task force to eliminate wasteful programs. We're We're going to end this corporate welfare, which brings nothing back into the economy more than what we spend on it. And then we're going to divert the funds that we save to things like education. And lastly, like I said, we're going to reform the budget process. That's how we're going to do it.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't think Everett's going to vote for you anymore, though, since you called him out over there. Since we know his viewing habits.
I lost the Everett Hamilton vote. Sorry, guys.
All right, question number 2. We'll start with Andrew this time. What is your position on gun rights, and would you support any efforts to amend the state gun laws? If so, how? Andrew, to you.
Yeah, so I am as most of you know who know me, I'm an avid hunter, I'm a sportsman. I grew up hunting and fishing, and I'm a strong supporter, as we all are, of the Constitution, of all 10 amendments that form the Bill of Rights. And there's a reason the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. It's incredibly important. I'm a strong supporter of it and a protector of it. And I'm also a concealed carry permit holder. At the end of the day, we have Second Amendment rights for 2 reasons, right? Sportsmanship and self-defense. But what I'll say is this, public safety is a priority. There's a reason that the Fraternal Order of Police has endorsed my candidacy, is because public safety is a huge priority. And what I find when you look at the tragedies that happen, that ravage our communities across the country, and there's been a spike lately, a lot of these problems, if we had enforced the laws, if you go back and if we had enforced the laws that were on the books, most of them would not have happened. And that's what nobody's talking about, is enforce the laws that are on the books, and then in our schools, let's look at some mental health programs, things like that. It's not about just dumping in more legislation, taking away people's gun rights for law-abiding citizens. Let's look at the actual things that occurred and develop legislation to fix those problems. I've talked about a temporary firearm restraining order, which basically says, look, if a family member thinks that their family member might be a danger to themselves or others, there's due process that they can go through and get a temporary firearm restraining order from a judge that would temporarily remove their ability to access firearms. I think that's reasonable. I think Democrats and Republicans would agree with it because it protects due process and it protects Second Amendment rights. It does both. And so anytime we look at these issues, we need to balance our objectives with constitutional freedom. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Eric, we'll throw it to you. What is your position on gun rights, and would you support any efforts to amend the state gun laws? If so, how?
Well, I'm a Jewish guy that grew up, was born and raised here. I thought buck hunting was a Jewish holiday, but I didn't actually engage in it. I own a shotgun. I do sports shooting, but I'm pretty crappy at it. To be honest with you, I'll be frank with you. This is kind of settled law. The Second Amendment was reaffirmed in 2015 with McDonald's versus the city of Chicago, but the court was split 5-4, like the country is split. And at the end of the day, we need to have an adult conversation and strip away special interest vitriol. We haven't done it. I mean, everybody gets panicked and everybody goes nuclear. And frankly, what I would support, and there's a couple of things that I think are very reasonable. Background checks, universal background checks make a lot of sense to me. I don't think anybody wants a criminal or somebody who's mentally ill to hold a firearm. By the same token, you have to fund mental health services so that people are getting treatment. You can't have it both ways. In addition to that, we got to be very careful about straw purchases that I think get violated and abused by not having background checks. Secondly, I would be more restrictive in gun sales at gun shows. I think it really poses a threat to legitimate gun owners who do the right thing and sell above board, and I also think it gives another opportunity for straw buyers to violate the law. So at the end of the day, there's 27 amendments. This is not pick and choose America. You don't get to pick 1, 2, 10, whatever flavor you want. You got to do all 27. And they're not all popular, but we have to find a balance. There's nothing absolute. I think the First Amendment is critical. However, I did not support the Wellsboro Church spitting on the tomb of a soldier killed in Iraq. I think there is a limit. It's the same thing, I believe, with how we deal with guns. I happen to think that the two issues, background checks are common sense, and regulating what we do at sports shows are common sense. But most importantly is, how do we protect our children? At Central Dauphin School District, we bonded $8 million 1 month after the attack in Florida. $8 million. To give you some idea, the state budgeted $60 million for the state. Our community budgeted $8 million. And to give you an idea of what we did, we built 4 vestibules in 4 elementary schools. We have a full-time police officer armed in Middle Paxton, because Middle Paxton doesn't have a police officer. We have a police officer at West Hanover. We have our own police force. We did this years ago. We've been proactive, and you should be proud about that. In addition to that, if you look at what we're doing with the remaining $8 million, we're improving security, burglar systems, and making sure that the kids are safe. However, we can't turn the school system into Fort Knox. There's a balance. And so I think the two issues we're looking about is how do we get a handle on who gets guns, who shouldn't get guns. I think I have two suggestions here that make sense. And the other is you can't spend your way to security. We live in a culture of violence, and we're going to have to at some point have an adult conversation on that. You look at the kids coming to school, and I, along with my colleague here, have to adjudicate these hearings. It would blow your mind to see what weapons are present, and they're not just guns. So hopefully we can tone down the vitriol and have an adult conversation about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, put your listening ears on. Question number 3 is a loaded question, but it's really not when you get down to it. Over the years, many people running for office have pledged to change the method of school property taxation with a focus on reducing or eliminating such taxes for senior citizens. Conversely, our public schools are in dire need of increased funding, while we see more and more funds leaving the public school system to pay for alternative education programs such as charter schools. So, what is your position on A, reducing or eliminating school property taxes for senior citizens, and B, continuing to fund charter schools from public funds? Eric, we'll start with you.
Yeah, the key issue here is pension. Without pension reform, you won't get property tax reform. I do not support SB 76 because I think it's political candy. It's a tax switch, and it does not eliminate property taxes. And it's not just seniors I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the family of 4 who are working, having an unjust property tax burden. One of the things we do in Central Dauphin, and is not used enough, is Act 51. People have the ability, when a tax increase occurs, to defer the payment. Unfortunately, it's underused, and I think we need to tighten it a bit. But the other thing we need to do is be aware of inequitable funding. Central Dauphin was defunded for $5.8 million last year. There's not an equitable funding formula throughout the state. In fact, Derry, Susquehanna, Steele, and Harrisburg are underfunded because we don't have the political clout. So 2 things we need to do is be mindful of everybody's burden when they're paying property tax. There's some seniors that may be on a fixed income, but it doesn't mean they're poor. So, we need to be able to help everybody when it comes to this issue. Property taxes are regressive. Everybody's going to promise to get away with them. It's not going to happen until we get our arms around pensions. And we haven't had a serious discussion about that right now. I just want to point out something. I'm not an opponent of charter schools, but I'm an aggressive opponent of how they're funding now. Make no mistake about it, I'm unequivocal. I happen to think, if you want to look at a charter school, look at Andre Agassi's in Las Vegas, a great model. Structure, uniforms, they go longer hours, and the kids go to college. It can work. It's not working here. By any measure, charter schools usually don't match up to public schools, whether you use the AYP or you look at PSATs or you look at SATs. That's a fact. It's not reality. The bigger problem are the economics and the unaccountability. At Central Dauphin School District, we spend almost $11,000 a year for charter school. We have no control, no accountability for those students. If they get an IET or special education, that number balloons to $25,000. What does that mean? Infinity in 2017 was $850,000. This year was $1.4 million, including $500,000 because they exceeded their registration. These are real numbers. Central Dauphin spends $7.1 million a year in charter schools. No accountability. We don't get to look at the IEPs, and the charter schools get to double dip on pensions. In other words, we pay their pension, and they also get a discount of 50%. I would just point out this, and a lot of people miss this with Governor Corbett, right? Well, Thornburg too, I guess. But Governor Corbett. Charter reimbursement, we used to get 30% to pay charter from the state, 30%. That was $500,000 for us. Governor Corbett cut it in 1 year, all right? That's real money. That's money the school district has to pull out. That's $3 million. So the charter reimbursement we used to get, gone. PSER's double dipping continues. The amount of money that we're paying charter increases every year. On top of that, I just want to put this out, we have increasing bills for ESL students, homeless students, and special ed. Those are obligations as a public school that I'm glad to meet, and we meet them. We don't get to pick and choose.
All right, Andrew, just to refresh everybody's memory, your position on A, reducing or eliminating the school property tax for senior citizens, and continuing to fund charter schools from public funds.
Yeah, so I agree with ending property taxes in Pennsylvania, because I think it's patently unjust to have to own property, and then you have to rent the property you own from the government. It's unjust. If you look at the Constitution, the very first role after forming a more perfect union is to establish justice. And so I talk to seniors. I've been knocking doors across this district, and I talk to seniors, 75, 77, 82 years old. They paid off their mortgage 20 years ago. They've raised their children. They've helped raise their grandchildren. Both generations long since graduated high school, and now they're forced to pay high property taxes that continue to go up despite being on a very low fixed income. And I'm talking to a lot of them who are on a low fixed income, because in case you hadn't noticed, a Social Security check is not that much money. And so frankly, yeah, we need to eliminate property taxes, and in the meantime, while we work toward it, we need to work on property tax relief. And how we're going to do that, there are a lot of state mandates. There's the pension, which is controlled by the state, that has to be reformed. We've got to end the prevailing wage requirement, which artificially hikes up the cost of construction projects and sticks taxpayers with the bill. We've got to make sure that we stop the wasteful spending and come together and figure out a way to provide immediate property tax relief and work toward property tax elimination. I'm the only candidate here who hasn't voted for property tax hikes. And look, this isn't a debate. Eric and I get along well. But the reality is, Eric, I mean, a lot of people are wondering why you voted to raise taxes and only voted against tax hikes as a candidate for the State House. But here's the thing, I've talked to too many seniors, and it's so frustrating. You see the look in their eye, they can't afford their property taxes, they go up every year, they're on a fixed income, and it's tragic to say, yes, I'm gonna work hard to lower your taxes so that you're not faced with the prospect of being forced out of your home, because I've heard of stories where they actually are. On charter schools, let's remember, first of all, charter schools are public schools too. Second of all, I hear stats, facts, figures, talk about institutions, and what nobody ever talks about is the kids. What about the kids? We're talking about the next generation, and there are school districts across the Commonwealth. Lower Dauphin and Central Dauphin are great school districts, but there are other school districts where kids are trapped in failing schools, and their only option at the American dream, their only shot at a good education is a charter school. And so yes, I support funding for charter schools. It's not the whole amount. When a kid goes to a charter school, the whole amount doesn't leave with them. It's a partial amount of that funding that leaves with them. And the fact is we have to look at the institution and make sure things are done judiciously, economic with financial stability, make sure they're funded, make sure our teachers are paid. But at the same time, we have to look at the kids. We have to think about what's best for them and for their futures as well. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Andrew. All right, we're up to question number 4, and we've touched on this a little bit, so let's go into it directly. The public education pension system is reportedly underfunded by over $60 billion, which is causing our school property taxes to constantly increase. It seems that this issue can only be solved at the state level. What are your thoughts on addressing the public pension debt? Andrew, we'll start back with you.
Well, it's not overly it's a complex issue, but fixing it is not overly complicated. You're looking at PSERS is unfunded by about $40 billion. SERS is unfunded by about 20, makes up about 60 billion total. And it's unsustainable moving forward, and we have to reform pensions so that we can A, fund them, B, fund our schools, and C, bring down property taxes. But I'll tell you this, for too long, a great promise has been made to our public employees, and there's been policy enacted by legislators who were unscrupulous when the market was giving great returns. And the fact is, the taxpayer bore the entire risk. Basically, it was this promise of we're going to give you these guys these pensions, and whether or not the market returns what we think it's going to return, the taxpayer is going to bear the risk and the burden, and we run out of money, we just go back and raise taxes. And I think that's wrong. So here's what I say. For number one, nobody's going to touch the pensions of the folks who've already earned them. One, it's unconstitutional. Second, it's unjust. If a promise was made to a public worker, they're going to get the pension that they earned, period. But number two, moving forward, we've got to reform the pension system and move to a 401k. In our business, every employee has the option to opt into our 401k program. I've got a 401k, you contribute to it. Hopefully the market returns the good returns, but the reality is that's what folks in the private sector have. So let's move toward that in the public sector as well so that we can have a sustainable system. Again, right now we are heading toward a financial crisis if we do not quickly address the pension crisis. We've got to fix it because it's the greatest financial burden and threat facing our Commonwealth right now.
Thank you. All right, Eric, your thoughts on addressing the public pension debt?
Again, I don't think the number is 60 million. I think it's closer to 68 to 72, and this gets a little abstract. I'll respond to Mr. Lewis's jab. I mean, one of the differences between us, I actually have held an elective office. And when I got to office, I had to deal with the fact the legislature has bequeathed us with unfunded mandates. The first 2 years, absolutely had to raise funds in order to deal with skyrocketing pensions and unfunded mandates like special education, homeless. That's reality. That's being an adult. That's being responsible. There's never going to be a time when I don't pay my staff, don't pay them their pension, or deny classrooms for special education. We talk about special education, mind you.
It's not only educating the kids, I have to transport the kids. When we transport the kids, they need to have a para. Not only do they need to have a para, they need to have a lift. And we're a school district that's attractive, that we're getting kids from Harrisburg, Steelton. We take all comers, but if you look at our numbers, staggering increase in ESL students, staggering increase in special ed. And yeah, I did that. By the way, did not vote to raise taxes the last 2 years. And if you go back there, the girls will have my tax plan, which before you could have seen it was on the front page of the Paxton Herald. We didn't need a tax increase. I, the Democrat, serving on a board with 7 other Republicans, opposed to tax increase. Maybe you should ask your fellow Republicans why they keep increasing taxes. When it comes to pensions, I supported H. Bill 900 in 2015 with my good friend John McGinnis, who is perhaps the most fiscally conservative Republican in the legislature. We put legislation together, would have taken actuarial tables from 30 years to 20 years. We would have been real about the rate of return. And yes, Andrew, we would have gone over the $5 billion that's been scammed from us. We've been talking about this for decades, but the reality is nobody wants to take it on because we need revenues. And we're not going to get those revenues until we have solutions. I've produced and tried to advocate 3 solutions. One of them, and it may not be popular, is we should be repurposing gaming funds. They were supposed to be used to reduce property taxes. We should be, right now, they're whams on steroids. We need to revisit that issue. You said again, get rid of the $240 million for horse racing dedicated to pension, eliminate the Delaware loophole. I mean, you get rid of that loophole. We're getting close to where we need to be. But where we need to be, this is a staggering number, $6 billion a year. $6 billion a year. Nobody's taking anyone's pensions away, but the reality is, if you do not start dealing with the pensions, the amount of money from our budget that has to go with the pension increases every year. That's a fact. That's a reality. So this is interesting. H. Bill 900, I was one of 2 Democrats that supported it, didn't get out of a Republican-controlled committee. John and I were furious. We couldn't get out of a Republican-controlled committee. Democrats didn't do squat, so I'm not leaving them off the hook. But, let's place blame where it is. There was a solution. The solution is still there. HB 900. Let's get real. Shared sacrifice means making sacrifice, not wishing this away. So yeah, I've made hard decisions, and I'll make them again. That's part of being an adult and winning an elected office.
Thank you. Hang on. You're going to have a chance for a closing statement, so you can jump in there. All right, question number 5. The current political climate on national level has been very divisive and emotionally charged, and at times almost uncivil. As an elected representative of our community, how would you strive to rise above the heated rhetoric and serve as a good representative for our community? Eric, we start with you.
That's right. I think what we need to do.
Mike Force.
Yeah, I think I strained my shoulder. Not that limber. You have to be willing to discuss things. I occupy the radical middle. I'm not a classic Democrat, I'm not a classic Republican. Some of my views don't fall easily in a cookie cutter. We have to respect other people's views and not just say it. One of the things we did at Central often is we used to just have a moment at the end of the meeting where the public had to wait till the end to make a comment. We now do it at the beginning and the end. We don't make people register ahead of time. You can register the moment you get there. I instituted, with the help of my colleagues, live streaming. It's a big district, so people can look at the meetings. Part of being civil means being informed and not coming there and just having an axe to grind. We also instituted a committee system. In fact, tomorrow, if I can do an advertisement starting at 3 o'clock, our committees will meet. Finance, public is welcome. All right, after that, I think building and grounds have been canceled. Then policy. So the way to have civility is to be inclusive. We've been inclusive. One of the things I'll do as a legislator, and this is, nothing new from what I do now, is steal a play from Jeff Piccolo's handbook. I will have a town hall meeting every month. I'll do it how Jeff used to do, an hour in South Hanover, an hour in West Hanover, at a minimum, and an hour in Lower Paxton. That's a month. That's at a minimum. In addition to that, I'll be going to township meetings in Lower Paxton, South Hanover, and West Hanover, and keeping in constant contact with both school districts. If you look at Central often, and you got to be aware, folks, we're the 12th largest school district. We're a big school district, not only in size, but in people. So in order for us to be effective, and I'll be honest with you, I've been disappointed in myself where I have been out of shape when I shouldn't. So it's a constant challenge for me to learn because people are passionate. Andrew's passionate, I'm passionate. But unless people are going to buy into this, we're going to be polarized. Right now it's ugly and it's divisive. So my commitment, and I'm going to, when I get to the closing, I'll talk about this, occupying the radical middle. Compromise is not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a win-lose-some game. You win some, you lose some, you move forward. So Andrew and I, we've been together Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We don't disagree a lot, but we're not disagreeable about doing that. So hopefully after I get elected, I'll be able to institute and roll that program out.
All right.
this is a very good question because it's very timely with what's going on with our politics nationally. And Eric and I, we have a good relationship even though we can disagree. I say he raised tax on school board. He says, look, I had to. I say, yeah, but you didn't show up for 2 of the votes. So look, I mean, we disagree, but we do it cordially and then we shake hands afterwards, okay? But for sure, when we send folks to elected office, we got to stop accepting excuses and make sure that we hold them accountable to do the job we elect them to do. So, as you all know, I had the privilege of spending some time in the military, and the reality is being stationed overseas in places like Fallujah, there are no Democrats, there are no Republicans, there are no Libertarians, there are no Independents. There is a mission and there is a team, and you work together as a team to accomplish the mission. Some of the guys that I serve with that are my best friends are to the left of Bernie Sanders. And we can have conversations, and we still love each other, and we can have conversations on policy, we can disagree on policy, but we can still get along at the end of the day, and that, as a country, is what we have to get back to. Because if you look back through our country's history, people could get along. They could talk, they'd shake hands, they can, be on the opposite side of the political spectrum and still see each other as moms and dads and grandparents and kids and people who work, have jobs, who just want, basically, we all have similar goals. We want to have safe communities. We don't want to be stuck in traffic for 30 minutes a day. We want our kids to have a better future than our own past. That's the American goal. That's the American way. And so we are all in this together. So let's stop the whole acrimony and the hating each other because we're on different sides of the aisle. And so what I'll do is I'll lead by example and bring integrity to the job and make sure we treat each other with civility and not disrespect or name call just because someone's on the other side of the aisle.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. That takes care of our official questions at this point. So now the questions come from you guys, and this one's candidate specific. So, Eric, do you support the Planned Parenthood agenda, and are tax dollars going to Planned Parenthood? Along with that, where do you stand on the abortion issue?
Yeah, let's cut to the chase. Yeah, I think that is geared for me. I don't know what the Planned Parenthood agenda is. I know what my agenda is, and I protect women's reproductive rights. I'll be frank about it. I've said that since day one. I'm also uncomfortable with late-term abortions, and I also support stem cell research. There it is. I mean, that's been my position. It's not going to change. If it makes you uncomfortable, don't vote for me. I'm not a political Gumby. I can't change to suit other people. If you like that idea, that's fine, but it should not be a wedge issue.
Andrew, would you like to respond as well?
And I'm on the other side of the fence from that. I'm pro-life. I believe in the dignity and protection of human life, including our unborn children. And no, I don't think we should compel people to subsidize with their taxes something that they object to morally. And abortions are part of that. So no, we shouldn't be subsidizing abortions.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, and Andrew, I'll let you start on this one. If you're elected, will you tax pensions in Pennsylvania? Will you tax the pensions?
I'm not in favor of this. I mean, I'm not in favor of it. I talk to a lot of folks who are barely scraping by on the small pension they get. And a lot of times now, and I sat in the living room of a couple, actually very progressive Democrats. And I sat in their living room, and the guy had worked his entire life, and then he left with almost nothing from his job, almost nothing. And so a lot of times, the companies these days, you work your entire life, and the company may have just a minimal pension, or if it's, Social Security, or depending on it's barely anything. So I mean, I believe in let's not tax the pensions. Let's look at how we can bring down taxation in Pennsylvania, not how we can add more taxes to the burden people already have.
Eric, would you like to respond?
Well, I think you assume people have pensions. I mean, it's nice and it's passionate, but what do we do with the steelworkers who got screwed? What do we do with other people that have had their pensions deprived? I mean, that's where my priority is. We don't have a cost of living increase for state workers for over 12 years to keep pace, but legislators get a cost of living increase. I'm as empathetic to seniors as anybody. I don't know that if somebody is making a gazillion dollars, they shouldn't be paying taxes. So I think when any tax rate, it has to be sensitive to anybody's ability to pay. I just don't think taxes are the answers. I mean, I think everybody's unequivocal about that, but you can't have it both ways. You can't ask for increased services and decrease taxes. There's only so much waste and fraud, folks. I mean, that's a one-off. We have to be serious. We have to prioritize and make discussions. I think people are coming to this state because we don't tax pensions. I haven't really looked at the issue seriously. financially. I don't know what the income is off of that, but to be honest with you, if somebody owns 14 houses and 20 boats, I think we may want to consider revenue there. But it shouldn't be broad-based. But let's think about that.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Our next question. How would you both vote on a bill proposing co-ed bathrooms or locker rooms becoming law, and why would you decide that way? Eric, you want to start?
Okay, co-ed bathrooms and locker rooms, I don't think is a good idea. I didn't realize that that was an issue out there. The bigger issue for me is, and if you look at it, is kids aren't showering. I mean, they don't shower after they have phys ed. Because look, when I went to phys ed, I don't know if anybody remembers Mr. King, you didn't have a choice. You not only showered, but you combed your hair with a Bristol brush. And then Mr. Barrow karate chopped you. But that being said, this doesn't seem to be an issue that is rising to the top. No, in fact, if you look at how we do locker rooms now, you have to have different locker rooms for the adults and the kids because of the sex scandal. That's appropriate. I'm being serious. A lot of kids refuse to shower right now. So as long as we have the shower facilities there, I think that's something you want to have segregated in a locker room. I don't know where that proposal is coming from. I've never heard it before. It's not something I could support.
Andrew, you want to address that?
Yeah, I'm against co-ed bathrooms. I believe in privacy, especially for our children, so I'm against it.
Okay. Would you guys share a locker room? Just ask. All right. TMI, guys, TMI. All right. What will you do about the failure of the legislature to update the tax forgiveness threshold of PA's personal income tax? What would you do about the failure of the legislature to update the tax forgiveness threshold of PA's personal income tax? Andrew, you can go first.
I'm going to be 100% candid with you guys. I'm not familiar with that issue.
I'll let you run with it. Maybe you can try.
Is that okay, Bob? If he,
Yeah, I think you're talking about the PIT. I mean, the issue is that they don't get a COLA. So basically, working class families that were getting a tax break have lost about 47%. So in other words, they don't get a COLA every year. Their ability for a working class tax credit has diminished by 47%. I don't know if Barry's here today. I'm sure he is. But Barry Shutt and I have introduced a plan whereby there would be a COLA for working class tax credits every year. I've suggested we take it from the legislative slush funds. It's something I battled for years. I don't know if you remember, but at the Legislative Audit Advisory Commission, and yes, I was arrested there one time because I think when you're using taxpayer dollars, I should be able to look at the numbers. We've reduced that from 240 to 120 to make these people whole, poor working class folks. We need to get them a COLA every year. We could fund it. It's about $22 million a year through the Legislative Slush Fund. I mean, this is a tax cut that I've been advocating for a while. I mean, this is something we need to do. We need to be sensitive to working class folks. On a minimum wage, what are you making a year? 15 grand? You know, we're going to have to start looking at these people, the brick and mortar folks of the country as well. So I would support a COLA for the PIT, but I also would take away the COLA for legislators. I'm not accepting a COLA. As I said before, I'm reducing my salary to 1995 levels. I don't think the COLA is legal. I don't think I should take it. I'm donating it. I'll probably be the first legislator that doesn't take a perk, a pension, health care, or anything. I'll be making 69 grand a year. That's still 17,000 more than a family of four. I'm going to be able to make it work.
Andrew, you want to jump in?
And again, I'll always shoot you straight. So if there's a specific nuance in policy that I'm not tracking, I'll let you know, and I'll research it, and we'll get it done. But yeah, the bottom line is we have the 10th highest state and local tax burden, and I've talked about this. And so however we need to address the issue is to lower that tax burden. We have businesses fleeing the state of Pennsylvania, and every 12 and a half minutes, someone else moves out. You have folks who grow up, they graduate college, and immediately they're looking for a job out of Pennsylvania. And a lot of that has to do with our tax burden. So I have 3 boys. I'd like to see them grow up, stay right here in our community, and someday, years down the road, have grandchildren, and they will be right here with us as well. But we've got to lower the tax burden to bring people into the state of Pennsylvania, have them stay here.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So how many people in the room been getting some stuff in the mail lately? Yeah, a little bit. So this is a question for Eric about one of the mailers. I've seen in the mailer recently, is it true that you don't show up for your job? I just wanted to give you the opportunity to explain, referring to the school board position is what this is.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, perhaps when he gets older, he'll realize what it's like to have healthcare challenges. I missed 4 months. I had a heart procedure. I have 8 stents. I had 3 stents. So I was going through cardiac rehabilitation. I asked for a leave of absence. Fortunately, it was granted. I also asked to resign. During that period, it was discovered they missed an artery. So I had to go back and have heart surgery again. So I did miss 4 months. That's, it's part of the public record. I'm not embarrassed about it. I think the way that it was portrayed was wrong. I mean, I don't know if Andrew's ever been to a CD school board meeting. I've been to numerous school board meetings, VOTEC meetings, committee meetings. If you want to go after that's fine, but know that, yeah, I had healthcare issues. People have them. I'm not going to run away from that. I think there's some weird factoid that I missed 40% of the budget votes. I don't know if that's true. I know the last budget vote I did miss because when I put my plan up to cut taxes, the Republicans on the board didn't even consider it, except for my one colleague. We put up a plan. We said, can you delay this? We've got a plan. We got a plan to reduce we don't need the 2.8%. And the plan is in the back there. Look at it. It's bulletproof. So yes, I was disgusted, and I'm not going to give credence to a need for an artificial tax increase. So not showing up for my job, if anybody knows me, on a bad week, I work 60 hours. I work 80 hours. Sorry for having heart surgery and not responding back right away. Maybe you would like me to smoke a carton of cigarettes too while I was at it. But this is also part of the reality in our healthcare system. Let me point out, I'm self-insured. I pay $901 a month. I have a pre-existing health condition. My deductible is $7,900. I got a GI 2 weeks ago. I paid the full amount, $50 for a doctor. So I know what it's like to struggle. And yeah, I took the time off to get better. If that's a crime, put me in prison.
Andrew, you want to about it?
Well, first of all, sorry, Eric, about the health challenges, but with all due respect, I spent 15 months in a combat zone where my health and my life were on the line on a daily basis, and I showed up for work every single one of those days. Let me tell you this right now. At 19, okay.
Hang on, let him finish.
At 19, 20, and 21 years old, when I woke up and I was saying this could be the last day I have, yeah, so don't tell me when I get a little older I'm going to understand this. Maybe when you get a little older you'll recognize that when we elect folks, we expect them to do the job we elected them to do, and there needs to be accountable at all levels of government. So if it's, hold on. If there's legitimate health challenges, that makes sense. I understand that, I get that. But at the end of the day, we could do without the disparaging remarks. And if I can just address this really quick, because there is an outside dark money group from Washington, D.C. that's been attacking me as well, that's been sending hate mail about my campaign, and it's saying that I want to gut Medicare and Social Security, which are federal programs. We're running for a state-level office. Those are federal programs. Of course, I want to protect those programs and safeguard those programs. I won't even get a vote on those issues, though, because they're federal issues, they're not state issues.
Okay, that's fair. A chance to clear this up. Is this the last one? Okay. Andrew, I'll let you go first on this one. This is our last question. What do you think, as far as Lower Paxton Township should do to address their stormwater management issue?
Yeah, so this is this is because of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. It's a national mandate that came down, and frankly, Lower Paxton has been trying to kind of preempt and to deal with this as it comes down the pipe. We're all about to get a pretty significant bill here, and it's problematic. It's a national mandate, so I mean we've got to push back on these national and state mandates, and as a legislator, what I would be doing is working with our delegation in Congress to make sure that they stop pushing these down on us so that we don't have to pay these exorbitant fees. And if they're going to push a mandate, then how about some funding so that our fees aren't going up and forcing us to pay even more.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Eric?
Yeah, I'm still here. Wow. Just to be clear, Medicaid is a state issue. We can vote to expand it or not. I mean, the Senate voted to expand it in 2013, 40 to 10. The time matters. So with experience comes some sense of perspective. Let me point out to you, the stormwater issue is not just a mandate. Our pipes are awful in Lower Paxton Township. That's a fact. A lot of the asbestos cement piping we had to replace. And we did it by floating a bond, and that's what I would support. As a member of the Central Dauphin School Board, we're not going to be exempt because it's going to be a tax. That's 125 grand coming out of our pocket. I don't know what's coming out of Holy Name. I don't know what's coming out of Bishop McDevitt. But this was a problem that was avoidable. We decided not to take care of our infrastructure, and this is what happened. So again, it's time to be an adult. We're going to have to repair it, but saying, oh, it's a mandate, this and that, you still got to replace the pipes. You got to replace the infrastructure. This is reality. You just don't say, hey, there's a pothole, Frosty the Snowman did it, and come back later. So one of the things that we need to get real about locally, and I got to give township supervisors a lot of credit. They're emergency responders. Trash doesn't get picked up, they get the call. There's a pothole, they get the call. Stormwater, my suggestion would be this. We should bond money like we did to repair sewage. We did it with $2,009. The interest rates were low. They've done a remarkable job. I know it's been inconvenient, but there's a middle ground, and that's what I'm going to propose on October 30th. But to think that our stormwater is all okay and big bad EPA put us in this position is deny that we did play a part in this as well.
Okay, thank you. It's our chance now for closing statements. We have 3 minutes, is that right? 3 minutes for a closing statement, and Eric, we'll let you go first, sir.
Thank you. Given my age, I might not make it. I don't know. I didn't think I'd make it to 58. But let me point out a couple of things. I think what's central here is that we had a hearty back and forth, and that's good. And Andrew and I are going to see each other umpteen times before the end of the campaign. I occupy the radical middle, which is compromise. People can say that, but I want to give you an outline, because these are some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, which actually one of the mailers disparaged. We've had 3 community-based agreements with 3 Mile Island. That's a public record. It's not a bad thing. That's EFMR monitoring. So in addition, in the back there, you'll find my position on stormwater. I'm sure Andrew will have his position out too. You'll see our position also on any issue that comes to mind. I brought copies of that. But let me just point something out. With the 3 Mile Island agreements, we increased the amount of taxes the island gave. We increased employment. We spent $2 million on remote robotics, which reduced worker exposure. We increased cybersecurity, physical security. We made the company sign a deal. They wouldn't store radioactive waste on the island. These are all good things. In fact, we had 3 Mile Island commit to increase their charitable contributions 5% annually. This is all part of the agreement that his flyer is disparaging. It's a good thing, and I don't have a problem doing community-based agreements. We did it with Triple Crown Corporation. Triple Crown wanted to build 512 houses. It stayed at 374. The density yield, 48% open space. We built a park, 10-acre park, 8,400 walkway. We took care of Crumbsville and McIntosh, which was an awful intersection. The last part of the deal happens when we smooth over 2 bumps. So yeah, I do community-based agreements, and that's what politicians do, and that's what adults do. You sit down with people that you don't agree with, and come to a solution. You want to. Yeah, you can criticize me all you want, but I stand by those agreements. And if you were around in 1993, and the first time we did it, it was an adversarial climate at 3 Mile Island, and I decided it was time to stop it. Let's work together and let's collaborate. You make peace with your enemies, not your friends. It's difficult, I know, but at some point when you reach across the aisle, you have to reach across the aisle. Give a little, get a little. No problem. You can send out as many leaflets as you want. I stand by it. A matter of public record. Frankly, if somebody on your research team would Google it, they would have seen it. Front page of the Philly Inquirer. Kind of hard to miss. I would also say that you have a clear-cut choice here. And what's great is Andrew's competent. He's young. He's exuberant. He's well-qualified. Either way, I think you're going to get a well-qualified person taking it in another direction. And look, all I can do at the end is simply say this. I'm not running as a Democrat. Although that's my party, when you call me, I don't see if it comes up Republican or Democrat. I don't care. I really don't. I never have. I have a 40-year career. It stands on its own. I'll respond to you. I'm an emergency responder. Anybody who knows me, I'll get back to you. You may not like it. I see Eric out front here, and we and I have had very turbulent discussions, but we came to a resolution, an agreement on the development behind the sheets. It's possible. It's doable. So what I'm asking you to do is vote for me on November 6th. Thank you.
All right. Andrew, your closing statement, sir.
Well, thank you all for coming out again, and thank you for humoring us and listening to our policy positions and our perspectives on the issues. Again, it's a privilege to run for this seat, and I truly do believe that we can continue to make our community a great place. We've got a litany of issues. We've got the traffic issues. We've got a lot of different problems that we face as a community and also as a Commonwealth. And our community needs a strong advocate. We need somebody who's going to bring our voices to Harrisburg, who's going to be there, who's going to show up, and who's going to get the job done for our community and for our state. And I'm privileged to be running to replace a longtime servant of the community, Ron Marsico, and privileged to have his endorsement. And I'm asking for your support and for your vote on November 6th. I will work incredibly hard to bring your voice to Harrisburg and to work hard to transform our state into being a top state for jobs and opportunity. Because Pennsylvania, for too long, we've squandered our potential. We're geographically the center of the East Coast, and we've been at the epicenter of the American story. We've got so many great things going for our state, and if we would just make a few reforms in Harrisburg, end the corruption, enact term limits, cut this tax burden, cut the wasteful spending, then we can get our state transformed and moving back in the right direction. Thanks so much. God bless. Take care.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for both of our candidates for being here tonight. We appreciate it, guys. Thank you. They will be available at the back of the room if you have any questions.